video is for a young girl who lives across the ocean from me, all the way over in England. And her name is Emily Reid. And her granddad, Jim Reid, has been a subscriber here for a long time. And he let me know that Emily likes to watch some of the videos that I do with him. So I did this special video for you, Emily, and I hope you'll enjoy it. And God bless you. And, keep that grandpa in line, okay? Much love from Michigan. It is mid-August, and it's very chilly tonight. There's actually, it feels like a touch of autumn in the air. And it's a good night for the story that I want to tell you. And the story is simply called A Twice Thankful Colony. In the old days, when people knew less than they do now, many people believed in witches. And we all admire the early settlers of New England who braved the dangers of the sea and the hardships of building homes in a new land. But we do not like to remember them as those that believed in witches and that punished people for being a witch. Having said that, let's move on to the story. It was the day before Thanksgiving, about 300 years ago, and in every house in the colony, great preparations were being made for the Thanksgiving feast the next day. Old Margaret Fall looked lovingly at the 2 pies that she had just taken from the brick oven and placed on the table to cool, and she smiled happily down upon them, for she felt that she had much to be thankful for during the past year. After all, had she not the little home in the new country where she could worship God as she chose? And moreover, she rejoiced with the rest of the colony for the wonderful harvest of corn that now stood in great shocks between the houses and forest. And then there was the greatest blessing of all. That little colony had been free from attacks of the murdering Indians for a very long time, and indeed many people believed that they were free from such dangers forever. It was no wonder then that the hearts of the people and the very air was filled with a spirit of thankfulness and excitement. Margaret moved back to the fire and sat down to rest in the pleasant warmth. With smiling, happy eyes, she gazed down into its brightness, and suddenly a soft, hurried knock sounded on the door, and she rose and opened it quickly, for night had fallen, and visitors were rare at such an hour. A look of deep surprise sprang into her face as she saw Sarah, the pastor's daughter, standing on the steps. "Child," she cried, "what are you doing out at night and alone?" And the little maid pushed her way into the room and closed the door behind her. She was breathing hard, as if from fast running. "Margaret Fall," she said, and her voice shook. "My father sent me. He dared not come himself for the fear of Simon Allen would see him, and it would make matters much, much worse. And Margaret," he says, "Simon Allen, not my father, that you are a witch." "A witch, Margaret? Margaret Fall, a witch?" she said. "Aye, a witch. And he hath said more. He hath told my father that you did lay your hand upon his arm 2 Sabbath days ago, and so did bring upon him the grievous illness that did befall him that very same night. And Margaret Fall, he says he will accuse you of witchcraft to the townsfolk after the great feast tomorrow." The soft rosy face of old Margaret grew suddenly white. Her gentle eyes grew wide with fear, and her wrinkled hands shook as they clutched the bosom of her blue gown. "Art sure," she said tremulously, "that Simon Allen said this to your father of me, who has tried to serve God all the days of my life?" "So my father bade me to tell you." Tears streamed down the little maid's cheeks as she talked on quickly. And he hath not stopped with telling my father. He hath gone among the neighbors all day, and my father hath learned that he hath got many to think as he does. But my father says it cannot be, that there are not witches. He hath sent me to say to you that you are to come back with me at once Now 'tis dark, and while everyone is at supper, so that none will see, you are to hide in the little room under the roof of our house till the alarm is quieted, until my father can reason with the people and make them see the error of their ways." Poor Margaret, without a word, but with tears running down her face, she took the little maid's hand and set out. Her poor trembling limbs hardly supported her. Fortunately, the distance was short, for the pastor's house was in the middle of the little town next to the church. That night, she knelt at the window of the little loft and looked with tearful, prayerful eyes over the moonlit cornfields stretching off to the edge of the woods, and she could see the long tables already set up under the trees for the feast on the morrow. Time and time again she bowed her white head and whispered, "Be merciful unto me, O God, for my soul trusteth in thee. Yea, in the shadow of thy wings will I make my refuge until these calamities be over." Thanksgiving Day dawned at last, and the air was filled with sunshine and with something more too. It was filled with strange rumors. Old Margaret Fall had gone away. She had ridden over the housetops on her broomstick. Simon Allen had seen her with his own eyes, and she was without doubt a witch. And when she came back, if she ever did, she must be put to death at once. Now Sarah heard the news as she stood with her father at the door of the little log church, and she heard Simon ask him to make particular mention of the witches in his sermon, and especially of Margaret Fall. But the pastor had merely frowned and walked into the church. Every man and woman and child in the town, except for old Margaret, was gathered to give thanks for the great blessings received by the people throughout the year. For 2 hours the pastor had preached before the word witch had dropped from his lips. What he intended to say was never known, though many guessed afterward, for the church door burst suddenly open. High above his voice rose an old shrill one. "Indians! Indians! Behind the corn shocks!" And old Margaret fell, a trembling heap, on the floor, and there was an awful silence. Then Simon Allen's voice rose, "Woman, you and your evil companions have brought this calamity upon us. Witch, where wast thou last night?" He caught her roughly by her frail shoulder and brought her to her feet. An angry murmur rose from the startled people, and the pastor's voice was heard above it. "In my house, Simon Allen. Cease thy foolish prating. She be no more a witch than thou. To arms, men, and follow me. Margaret, brave woman, I have my daughter. I leave my daughter to thy care, if I return not. Forward, men." And so saying, he strode, gun on shoulder, out of the little church, followed by a full 100 strong and sturdy armed men. And so much did they outnumber the painted enemy behind the shocks of corn that the wily redskins fled as they approached at the sight of the pastor. And the pastor said, Let us give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, his mercy endureth forever. And let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he hath redeemed from the hand of the enemy. Yea, let us give thanks, that through his handmaiden Margaret Fall, he hath brought us forth in time to meet the foe. And a full 100 voices cried out, Amen. And old Margaret Fall was vindicated. They knew that she was not a witch, and that she was part of them. I hope that you enjoyed this story, and I hope you'll give it some thought. It has parallels with our time, and I think that there's a good lesson to be learned in here. And again, I hope you all enjoyed it. Jim, I hope you and your precious little granddaughter enjoyed the story, and I will see all of you again real soon, God willing. I love you all, each and every one of you, so very much. And God bless you and keep you safe, happy, strong, and well.